Hello, welcome to Normal Islands Live. I'm Curtis Daly, and I'm joined by the one and only Kevin Logan. Kevin, tell me about your weekend,
Um, it, I got drunk and watched
or not.
football.
Maybe it's boring. I don't know.
No, I just got drunk and watched football. I wasn't expecting a personal question about my weekend. I was merely lining up a piece of flattery, as
I mean, you can
usual.
you can do the piece of flattery, but it's genuine,
You,
like
you threw a
human
curveball.
a curveball. It's a normal human thing to do to ask you small talk questions, but I won't do that next time.
No, don't. I have no interest in the people understanding me or my existence. Thank you very
Did
much.
your team at least win at the weekend?
No, they fucking didn't. Obviously.
Good. Just kidding. Let's get on with the show. Now tonight we're going to be discussing Morgan McSweeney's phone conveniently being reported as stolen, with key messages between himself and Peter Mandelson. Again, that's very convenient. Zach Polanski telling a right-wing reporter to piss off after being doorstepped. And Israel all of a sudden are concerned with international law after facing strikes from Iran. You can help us grow by visiting turnleftmedia.co.uk. Sorry, I'll start that again. You can help us grow by visiting turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. I never messed that one up as well. What's wrong with me? To help fund our work, or by becoming a YouTube member for 99p. But let's get on with the first story. It's been reported that Morgan McSweeney's phone, which had messages from Peter Mandelson, was stolen before it could be handed in for an investigation. Sir Keir has been forced to pledge that a huge cache of information about Mandelson's appointment as US ambassador will be published in the wake of revelations about his relationship with the paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein. Mr. McSweeney, who was reported to have pushed for Lord Mandelson to get the ambassadorial role, resigned as Sir Keir's chief of staff earlier this year after a row around his appointment, and what was known about the pair's links at the time erupted. Morgan McSweeney's phone, which contained in the messages, was stolen last year. Lewis Goodall asked Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government Steve Reed about those messages on LBC.
Morgan McSweeney's phone has disappeared with many of his messages to Lord Mandelson on it, and no backup exists.
Well,
You do understand why many people will find that very convenient.
well, as I understand it, that was a theft that was reported months before the whole Mantle situation
backup.
even began.
No backup. Prime Minister's Chief of Staff has no backup of his messages.
Well, I don't know what he does or doesn't have in terms of
Doesn't seem ideal,
backups,
does it?
But his phone was stolen, and he reported it at the time, and it was well in advance of anything happening around the Mandelson situation.
I remember when Boris Johnson's phone, all the WhatsApp mysteriously disappeared on that. I remember Labour shadow ministers being pretty incredulous.
Yes, and that happened after he had been required to provide it. Morgan reported the theft of his phone months, I think it was maybe even over a year before the whole situation arose, so there's no comparison.
So the defense here is that it was stolen and reported before the investigation, and it was all just a coincidence. However, it's not unreasonable to suggest that the government knew an investigation was looming, and McSweeney ditched the phone, made a report that the phone was stolen to cover their tracks. Now, look, we don't have concrete proof that this was done deliberately, but this is a remarkable coincidence. And why those messages weren't backed up makes it look all the more incriminating. Although, according to The Independent, some messages between McSweeney and Mandelson are in the hands of the Cabinet Office. It's also worth pointing out that McSweeney pushed for Mandelson's appointment, which led to his resignation. Kevin, I know a lot of this is speculation, but that's one hell of a coincidence, isn't it?
Yes, anyone who genuinely believes that this is a natural occurrence and that no chicanery has taken place, please contact me. I have not one but several bridges to sell you. This is complete bullshit. Let's just call it exactly what it is. This is a lie, yet another lie. And even if we were incredibly charitable and generous in order to accede to this absurd story, this childish excuse, the government have made a run for their own backs in terms of people believing that such a coincidence had taken place, because they have lied about everything at every turn. Not just the fact that, obviously, if we can go back to Keir Starmer's election as Labour Party leader, broken every single pledge he made there, broken pretty much every pledge he made at the general election, and indeed has done things that were not in the manifesto directly against the interests and beliefs of the British public. But of course, in this particular story, they have lied about everything at every turn. Not only did they lie about the extent to which they understood the relationship between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein, before appointing Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the United States, but they lied about lying about that as well. So they literally compound lied about everything. They claimed that the intelligence briefing that had been given to Keir Starmer was not there, even though we know it was on his desk the day he went to Parliament and claimed that he had confidence in Peter Mandelson 2 days before, of course, sacking him. He also they lied about. They also lied about the national security interest in denying the initial request of both opposition and their own MPs to have these documents released about Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein and the intelligence briefings and all of that, until, of course, the humble address was put forward and they realised they had no legal standing on this, and so completely backtracked on that and said that actually, yeah, it's fine, there probably isn't a national security interest at all, and just acceded to it rather than it going through, which would be embarrassing. So they have lied about this consistently. So why on earth would anyone believe this story when, of course, it's the excuse that a child would use? Like, it's so obvious they got out ahead of this story and decided that it would be convenient knowing what was coming down the pipeline in terms of investigation, because there was always going to be a great noticing by both the general public and, of course, the British media, as compliant as it is at times, into this. And so they got ahead of the story and claimed it was stolen, so they had a plausible deniability that in a court of law would not hold muster, of course, because it's beyond a reasonable doubt as the standard. But we are in the court of public opinion, and in the court of public opinion, they are obviously guilty.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any sort of previous lies from the government would have made a difference in this particular aspect, because I think when it comes to being linked to a paedophile, and the excuse is basically a dog ate my homework kind of excuse. Like, no one's going to buy it anyway. But it certainly doesn't help with the last 2 years of pretty much gaslighting in line from this government, right? Also, to add into the context of all of this is that Keir Starmer lied about his knowledge of Peter Mandelson, saying, I didn't know anything about Peter Mandelson before I made him ambassador, but the leaks report showed that actually he was warned about Peter Mandelson. And I make this point every single time, though. Just that one image of Mandelson and Epstein shopping together, like buying a belt or whatever, right? Just that one image to me is like, that's stay well away. I mean, if there's one thing you don't want a government to be linked to, is anything to do with paedophilia. So if your average Twitter Joe can find that image, surely the Prime Minister can't they?
Not just that, but you think the British media might have been able to publish anything to do with this at the time he was being appointed?
You would think that. But I do think, though, this sort of adds into the wider context of this government being so incompetent. One thing we were promised, well, many things were promised, right? But one of the things we were promised at the 2024 general election, we spoke about so many times, is that these are the adults in the room. Even in terms of ideological views, there wasn't too much difference between the Conservatives, but they did say, we're going to be smart, we're going to be competent, not like the last government. There's going to be no scandals. They want to be a clean whistle. It's been scandal after scandal, and this is another one in which even if, and I don't buy it, but even if the phone was genuinely stolen, why not have the messages backed up? Surely it's really, really important. Because even if you're like, oh, do you know what, these messages could embarrass me, I don't think it's unreasonable to think, do you know what, there could be an investigation in the future. Maybe I should cooperate with the police fully, and these messages might be important. I better keep them. So even if the phone was stolen, the fact that it wasn't backed up kind of tells me they didn't really want people to know about it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. The phrase that they constantly kept using was they were going to end the Tory chaos, which was nice as a slogan, but of course they've just replaced it with Labour chaos, because as you mentioned, one of the sort of electoral kryptonite issues is being connected to, you know, pederasty or pedophilia or whatever. And of course, the Peter Mandelson scandal at the week that broke wasn't even the only pedo-related scandal in the Labour Party. They had multiple of them, which just goes to show you how absolutely disgraceful they are as a party, really.
Yeah, and when I'm saying like right wingers attack Labour, like, a lot of the time they attack Labour for bad reasons because they attack them from their right. But when you see right wingers say they're like the paedophile party, I'm sat back going, well, can't really disagree, can I? The problem
Well,
is,
you
though,
can't.
is that they're not the only ones who are like the paedophile
Well,
party.
exactly. Like literally, Parliament is a hive of scum and villainy, be it about paedophilia or indeed the rape and sexual assault of adults as well, which is replete and commonplace. Whether it be parliamentarians watching pornography in the House of Commons chamber itself multiple times, whether it's abuses of the expenses system, which, by the way, is yet another time bomb waiting to explode again, because the reforms that were brought in were pathetically insufficient, as of course they were going to, because MPs marked their own homework on this. The Tories attacking them as the pedo party, like, that's true, but it's very much the meme of the two Spider-Mans pointing at one another. They're literally the same set of sexually abusive, corrupt, power-hungry gobshites.
Completely agree. Let's move on to our next story. The right wing are not happy with Zach Palansky after he was rudely interrupted in an interview with a student by a man named Will Coleshill from Vox Populi. Zach didn't hold back. Darren Grimes shared the video and said this. Zach Palansky gets asked a simple question on why his party chose to support decriminalization of abortion until birth, a grim policy. Palansky's response? Piss off. He didn't even defend his own party policy. Let's take a look at the video.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Mr. Palansky.
Hi, sorry.
Why does your party support killing unborn babies 9 months up till birth? Your party supports all of your MPs and all of your lords voted to kill, to decriminalise killing babies 9 months up till birth. Are you the party of baby killing, Mr. Palansky?
Sir, can I ask you to leave, please?
Mr. Palansky.
Guys, can I ask you to leave, please?
Excuse me, I was on mute there. So did Zach Palansky act disgracefully? Was he rude? I mean, according to Darren Grimes, it's awful to tell a journalist to piss off. This so-called journalist went up to him and said, do you support baby killing? I mean, what do you expect's going to happen? And by the way, he was doing an interview with a student, right? And in the middle of it, he interrupted him and said, well, does your party support baby killing? Too right, he got told to piss off. I absolutely loved it, by the way. Now, who are Vox Populi? Well, it's a far-right organisation. They even sell remigration merch. Apparel of the unconquered. Remember who you are. Dress the part. And attached to the tweet is millions must go. Generation remigration. 2 words. Detain, deport. Yeah, some pretty fash stuff there. Now, what is this claim that the Greens support killing babies up until birth? I mean, what a crazy way to frame such an issue. But is it true? Do the Greens back abortion up to birth? And back in May last year, Labour's Tonya Antonazi tabled an amendment that sought to remove the criminalisation of abortion. It would mean women would no longer be criminalised under the Offences Against the Person Act of 1861, the piece of legislation, the piece of Victorian legislation, that most recent abortion cases have been prosecuted under. Nor would they be criminalised under the Infant Life Preservation Act of 1929, which carries the offence of child destruction. And you can hear, I mean, 1929, 1841, these are archaic pieces of legislation. Now, Antonazi said, we've seen a sharp rise in the number of women and girls facing criminal investigations following pregnancy loss and abortion, she said. It's just wrong to put women in this situation, to put them into the criminal justice system, because this is not a criminal law issue. This is essentially a healthcare matter. Now, Nicola Packer faced prosecution for an abortion. She waited nearly 5 years for her case to appear in court, and she was subsequently cleared by a jury at the Isleworth Crown Court. The law being changed is backed by medical experts, including the British Medical Association, the Royal College of Midwives, the Royal College of Nursing, and the Royal College of General Practitioners. It's about overturning an archaic piece of legislation that punishes women for the right to choose. But where do abortions up to birth come in? Well, currently, legal abortions have a limit of 24 weeks. Well, just last week, the House of Lords debated this policy whilst trying to remove the amendment from Anti-Nazi to remove criminalisation. But again, how does this link to allowing abortions up to birth? Abortion in England and Wales currently remains a criminal offence, but is legal with an authorised provider up to 24 weeks, with very limited circumstances allowing one after this time, such as when the mother's life is at risk or the child will be born with a severe disability. So, it is true that in very, very rare circumstances, abortion can happen after 24 weeks as an emergency. But this is already the law. That hasn't changed. So why the outcry from right-wing media organisations? Well, because the amendment is to remove criminality from women, and that passed. Vox Populi has twisted this issue completely. Despite regulations on abortion time not changing, they're trying to say that because women are no longer at risk of prosecution for abortions, that means in the extremely rare circumstances that a late-term abortion goes ahead, this means that anyone who supported the amendment supports killing children and supporting abortions up to birth. Now, why does this relate to the Greens? Well, the amendment was supported by Green MPs Carla Denyer and Sian Berry. Kevin, before we talk about abortions, going back to Zach's reaction, I mean, I loved it. It was funny. But do you think there's going to be those who would look at that and be like, oh, I'm a bit put off by the way he handled it?
No, I don't think anyone will be put off by it. Certainly not anyone who might even vote for him. This was the correct response. When doorstepped by lunatic right-wingers, tell them to piss off. It's the only response that I think really works for them, because they need the oxygen of you talking to them, of the publicity of all of that. Don't give it to them. They are worthy of nothing but contempt. So show them that contempt and get on with your day. Don't fall into the trap that so many do. And it's perfectly understandable as a public servant to want to address these issues and give, detailed policy briefs. But these people are not interested in it. They don't want an explanation. As you pointed out, it's the bait and switch here of Darren Grimes saying, oh, he was asked about his party's policy about abortion, blah, 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 which sounds perfectly reasonable. And then you show the clip and it's him going, do you want to murder babies? Like, it's ridiculous, obviously. Of course you should tell someone like that to piss off, because that's the only response that they're worthy of, frankly. Also, just as an interesting aside, if you want to talk about organisations that like to kill babies, maybe go and ask that question to the IDF or the American Armed Forces, who just killed 160 girls in a school in Iran. If you really were interested in anyone killing children. Yeah, no, this was the perfect response from Zach Polanski, and any reasonable person who might vote for the Green Party would not be put off by this at all. He played it perfectly well.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny, if you care about abortions when it comes to rights for women, but don't care about children dying when it comes to America and the IDF, you don't care about children.
Yeah.
Of course, as we know, medical experts say it's not a viable fetus until after 24 weeks. And it is in the extremities in which people's lives are at risk. But the way in which this has been weaponized as you want to kill children up to birth. And look, in the very rare circumstances abortion after 24 weeks happens, right? It could be 25 weeks, 26 weeks, but there's this sort of picture, and it's from the Christian right. We're going to talk about that in a second, which is that, oh no, they're literally like killing babies like the day before the baby's born. Like it's fully developed and they're just shooting it. Like that's the image they want to see.
Well, it's an importation of the same American culture war nonsense. This post-birth abortion
crap.
Yeah, exactly. De-Yankification now and forever. It's importing in the same way that the panic around trans people and toilets and all this sort of stuff. It's an importation of American culture war rhetoric because it's worked in America, which doesn't seem to work as well in Britain because we don't have a kind of religious right as such. Not to say we don't have right wingers who are religious, but we don't have like an organised political structure in that same way because evangelicals are basically non-existent in Britain for the most part. But it's an importation of that because they think it's a successful strategy. And of course, they will do anything to avoid talking about economics because they know on that front, their system is wholly broken. The system they created and they wanted is destroying lives. And so they will talk about anything except economics.
I feel like you kind of sort of answered my question. I'm going to ask you anyway because we can probably expand on it. But
please do.
I think you're right. Okay, there's no Christian fundamentalism in the likes of America. But do you think this does worry you that abortion could be back on the agenda? We've had Nigel Farage, I believe, last year or the year before, questioned it, and he's had money come from far right and Christian fundamentalist groups. And when reading about this story, there were sort of pro-life Christian groups involved in this. So do you think there is a potential rise in Christian fundamentalism? Now, to add a caveat to this, when we saw the Unite the Right rally, which had many far-right figures there were many young men, British young men, who were saying about God and all this sort of stuff. And it was like very yankified sort of religious talk. Because we are quite famous for not being that religious, but there was a lot of that there. Maybe it's only in the sort of small corner of society. But my question is, do you think there's a potential worry that there could be a spike in this sort of behavior, political sectarianism and groups from the Christian fundamentalist right?
I don't think there's a particular risk of there being an increase in Christian fundamentalism as such. I don't see that the numbers are going to change massively. What might happen, and there's always a risk of this, and this is one of the ways in which fascism begins to take hold and manifest itself, is that the Christian fundamentalists who do exist start to become an overrepresented minority in the political discussion. They become a much noisier, much louder force than they actually are, as I think you shown by the Unite the Right rally, right? They make up a relatively small portion of the population, but when they do coagulate, it seems like there's a big groundswell of opinion because it's a large number of people. But that rally basically represents all of the people in the country who believe those things. There isn't like a wider spread, I think, amongst the population in a way that anti-war demonstrations, I think, do represent the public opinion. These people do not represent public opinion, ironically, given that the organization was called Vox Populi, of course. But the real threat is, I think the trans issue, if you want to call it that, although I don't want to respond, talk about people as if they're an issue, because that's pretty demeaning. But the political discussion, I think, is a perfect example of the way in which the real threat isn't that the overall number of people become larger in terms of the political discourse. It's that they start to burrow into the system. They start to pass pieces of legislation. They start to do regulatory capture and capture of organizations to the point where they begin to dictate the discussion, which does then begin to influence public opinion, and we've seen that in the passing of anti-trans pieces of legislation, or at least the ruling from the High Court and all the rest of it, or the Supreme Court, I should say. But yeah, the real problem is the frankly Machiavellian way in which they burrow into the system, and so we've got to be very wary of that. We've got to be very wary of it in a number of ways. And I think the real key sort of, I don't know, not even juxtaposition, the similarity. You mentioned the merchandise, which was gross as fuck from the Vox Populi group, but when they talk about deporting people and repatriating people, that's become public policy under the current Labour government. They're going to pay for people to be repatriated. This is the real problem, is that liberals, in order to placate such people, have just become these people, and you embolden them. You don't refute them by doing this. You don't take the sting out of their arguments by doing this. You give them legitimacy. in the public discourse, because all of a sudden it doesn't seem quite so extreme when it's nicey Keir Starmer doing the announcement of the policy that was literally a core not referendum, a core policy of the BNP 20 years ago. That's the problem. And that's the enablement of fascism from liberals, a story as old as time itself.
I worry too about that aspect because I do not foresee a future in which people become more religious. In fact, poll shows that people are becoming less religious. That's whether you're a Muslim, Christian, whatever. Younger people are becoming more atheist, right? Or at least agnostic or don't believe in a particular religion.
That's secular,
but it's the secular, but it's the back door of politics in which it might not be shared by the majority of people, but if pro-life groups have good favor with conservative peers, for example, in this case, that's what happens, then they may have some sort of political influence, just like AIPAC in America. Majority of people hate AIPAC now, so much so that Democrat politicians have switched their allegiance to J Street, which is just a liberal Zionist outlet, and they're pretending that they're not standing with Israel. They know the popular opinion is not with AIPAC, yet money is there. And actually, it's not just AIPAC, it's billionaires in general, corporations. So many people want to see some more pro-working class policies, yet the 1% captures so much power. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting for 1 second that the Christian right or even just pro-life groups have the same amount of power as corporations and the billionaires, although sometimes there's a crossover there. It does worry me in that aspect. In terms of the way, going back to Darren Grimes' tweet, okay, he didn't say the Greens support killing babies. I don't think that's something he would say. Not because he's has any integrity, but I think he would know even that sort of language will people would be like, that's bullshit. But he did say, well, don't the Greens support termination up to birth? And pushing that kind of misinformation can be quite harmful because a lot of people would be like, well, I'm pro-choice, absolutely support the right of women to choose, but I don't support, abortions up until birth, right? That could be something in which could tarnish anyone who supports this. Again, is that a worry for you? Or do you think most people will be like, I don't know if I even buy that and would ignore it?
It's definitely a worry. These people have a certain cultural cachet to them that, unfortunately they don't deserve, but they do have, especially because Darren Grimes is now an elected official, which is a disgraceful thing to have to say, but is unfortunately true. Yeah, it's definitely a worry because they will influence some part of the population, and that in of itself is worrying. Any amount of the metastasization of the cancer at the heart of British body politic right now is a worry. I think most people, reasonable people, would not buy into this, but the fact that any people would is a damning indictment of the British education system. Frankly, that anyone is that stupid, uneducated, and ignorant to believe that any of this nonsense is true. But unfortunately, it is, and these people get to vote and be part of the national discourse. And so, yeah, it is definitely worrying. How you combat that is, again, through education to an extent, through mobilizing against the far right to an extent. Although, in of itself, that is complicated because I don't know if you've been aware of this rally that's planned against the far right in the summer, but like they've got Labour MPs that are going to be appearing there. And I think to myself, how can you join in common cause against the far right with the Labour Party that are now planning to repatriate people with money? Which again was a core part of the BNP's manifesto back in the day, and it's been a talking point for fascists for decades now. These people are not opponents of the far right; they are enablers of the far right, and so you can't really find common cause with them. They're trying to sort of whitewash, I think, their own credentials ahead of a general election in a few years, which is going to be very difficult. And so we needn't ally ourselves with these people, I think. And so it's complicated, but there are ways in which we can fight back against it. Because I don't think that Darren Grimes's arguments are particularly convincing to most people, especially because they're obviously nonsense. Like no one in their right mind thinks that either Antonia Antonazzi or any other reasonable person wants to randomly kill babies as they're coming out. Like, it's ridiculous.
And again, as he pointed out earlier, which we're probably going to touch upon a little bit later on, there are organizations and groups of people that are killing babies, and it's not those that believe in women's rights. It's It's the IEF.
Well, the idea that they care about children at all, given that it's all of these mother flippers are funded by far-right American dark money, which is literally like from MAGA, which is literally a one-person political revolution led by a man who is a paedophile.
And a rapist. Paedophile and a rapist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. But before we go on to our final story, you know what I'm going to say? It's 2026. We want this to be a big year for Turn Left. We want to be far more ambitious than last year and to really put us on the map. We would like 2026 to be the year where we can finally have a studio for our contributors to be paid for the work we do. Your support over the years has been amazing, and we are ready to take this to the next level. We rely on small donations, so if you want to be part of a media organization that seeks to destroy the oligarchs, then please head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There you can support us monthly on Patreon, or there is another link for a one-time contribution. Of course, you can also become a YouTube member for 99p. Final story. So it seems that Israel is suddenly concerned with war crimes. Now they've been on the wrong end of strikes from Iran. The Israel Foreign Ministry tweeted this. The Iranian regime devastated Arad and Dimona by deliberately striking civilians with missiles. Over 100 people were injured, including children. A blatant war crime, pure terrorism. Pro-Israel journalist David Collier said, "This is what remains of a kindergarten in Rishon LeZion, an Iranian ballistic missile attack today. Expect absolutely no media coverage whatsoever and no angry condemnations from human rights groups." Just a caveat, it's not been reported there's been any deaths from that particular strike. I'm not saying that striking kindergartens is good, by the way. But I also find it funny. It's like there's going to be a media blackout over this, as if, yes, the media are obviously biased against Israel. Now, following the strikes, Israel has called on the UN to issue an emergency meeting. Breaking, Israel requests emergency session at UN Security Council, accusing Iran of using banned cluster munitions. Israel routinely uses both cluster bombs and white phosphorus on Palestinians. Well, that's a bit fucking rich, isn't it? The same UN who are supposedly anti-Semitic, who supposedly support Hamas, is now needed by Israel. The same Israel who have broken international law countless times. I mean, do you think the world feels any sympathy for Israel? Especially after this shocking story and warning, this is extremely disturbing. Israeli soldiers subjected a 1-year-old child in central Gaza to torture to pressure his father into making confessions during an interrogation, Palestine TV reported Sunday, citing Palestinian journalist Osama al-Khalaut. It aired footage showing injuries to the child, identified as Karim, after he was detained by Israeli forces near the Al-Maghazi refugee camp in the central Gaza Strip. The forces tortured the child in front of his father, including burning one of his legs with cigarettes, pricking him and inserting a nail into his leg, as confirmed by a medical report. The child was released about 10 hours later and handed over to his family through the International Committee of the Red Cross in Al-Maghazi, while the father remains in Israeli detention. A baby. Israel forces tortured a baby. So no, people will not feel sympathy for a state that's engaged in multiple wars, genocide, and is now crying they are facing just a tiny fraction of the way they treat others. And whilst all of this happens, British media is still complicit in the crimes of Israel. In an exchange between Green Party leader Zach Polanski and the BBC's Nick Robinson, Robinson refused to label what Israel is doing as a genocide.
Israel's genocide in Gaza, and I know we'll get into a conversation about definitions, but even if you just call it the mass killing of lots of innocent people, I think has demonstrated exactly what they were saying to me.
The word, of course, matters, and I don't want to have a debate about the word, but I do want it noted that no court has said it's genocide. and Israel completely rejects the idea as genocide. But as you say, you call it mass killing, you also call it
I feel
genocide.
I need to respond, though, that Amnesty International, various human rights organisations, and the UN Special Rapporteur, as well as lots and lots of genocide scholars.
In a sense, I don't want to drag us into a debate about language, but it's only fair to point that out.
Now, Zach rightly, he was rightly called out by Zach afterwards. So Zach Polanski tweeted this. Amnesty International say what is happening in Palestine is, you've got graphic 11 there. Did I not include that? That's a later graphic. Maybe one before that. I don't think we have graphic 11. Yeah, one before that one you just shown. Okay, maybe the one before that one, because that's the preceding one. Okay, all right, sorry, we don't have graphic 11. I'll read it out to you. Amnesty International say what is happening in Palestine is a genocide. The UN Special Rapporteur says it's a genocide. Countless genocide scholars say it's a genocide. How are we still doing this, and why is the BBC doing this? We'll add the graphic in post. And Nick Robinson replied to defend his position. One before that one, sorry. There we go. Simple answer, Zach. Our job is to report. We interview you and those you quote who use the word genocide. We do the same for those who disagree. We also report that no international court has yet made a judgment, nor has the UN. That's not me or the BBC taking sides or downplaying what's happened in Gaza. It's doing our job. Now, unsurprisingly, Robinson was called out on his bullshit. Sociologist and academic Martin Shaw responded with, "But Nick, you don't interview those who use the word genocide. I'm one of the most prominent British genocide scholars, and I called Israel's genocide in October 2023. I've had a lot of international media attention, but my BBC total in 30 months is one interview on Radio Ulster." Economist Professor Steve Hall responded to Shaw and gave his insight on the BBC. "I feel your pain. I was once feted by the BBC as an authority on crime and violence. BBC News, The Long View, Moral Maze, etc. A producer told me I was the next public intellectual. In 2009, I signed a BDS petition as a protest against Israel. Haven't heard from them since." So whilst Robinson is trying to claim this is supposedly about impartiality, we know in reality the BBC doesn't like its journalists being critical of Israel. But even Robinson's argument doesn't work because the UN has declared what Israel is doing as a genocide. The ICC, the ICJ have called this a plausible genocide. You've got multiple genocide scholars and multiple human rights organizations. They say it's a genocide. So why isn't the BBC saying that? I mean, it wouldn't be political bias to use the term genocide because they can just appeal to an authoritative institution. The BBC is engaging in journalistic malpractice when it refuses to objectively report. Now, if I claim the sky is blue, would the BBC refuse to say so for fear of taking sides? Kevin, before we talk about Nick Robinson and the BBC, I want to get your comment on Israel suddenly caring about international law.
Well, to the nation of Israel, to the Israeli government, to the IDF, so-called, you have sown the wind and you are now reaping the whirlwind. I have not a single iota of sympathy for you and your nation. Simple as that. Since the year 1980, you have had 93 UN resolutions passed against you, none of which you have complied with. You have a nuclear base very near to the bombings that were shown earlier, which, by the way, are potentially war crimes by Iran. I will not deny that for a second. You have a nuclear base near to this location, which you have not allowed a single International Atomic Energy Agency employee inspect at any point, and you indeed deny exists. The idea that you care about international law is a farce. We have watched you destroy the Gaza Strip. over the last 3 years. We have seen the continued annexation of land and houses and farms, etc., from the Palestinians in the West Bank as well. You have bombed every single one of your neighbours and many of the countries that don't even border you, including, of course, Iran. You have bombed Iranian oil fields to the point where they have gasoline rain pouring down upon them, which will have health impacts upon them for potentially the rest of their lives. You have killed untold numbers of people in Palestine over the last 3 years. And just as a personal sort of rumination upon this, the last 3 times now I've been on this show, we have covered the story of Israeli armed forces sodomizing a prisoner with a knife and being let off. We have covered the murder of an entire Palestinian family who were just going out to get some food. And we have now covered the torture of a 1-year-old with cigarette burns and a nail through the leg. The idea that the Israeli government give the slightest shit about international law is a disgusting alloy of hypocrisy to the genocide they are engaging in. And I will not for a second get into a debate with any motherfucker who claims that this isn't a genocide. If you claim it isn't a genocide, it is because you support the genocide.
Quite right. I think October 7th, around that time, a bit after, I happily would debate with people saying this is a genocide, because a lot of people would have been ignorant about the historical issues with the apartheid state of Israel, right? People were waking up to that fact. And there are people since the 7th of October have gone on a journey, have changed their view. In the year 2026, where hundreds of thousands of people have been slaughtered, where I've seen images of teenagers be burnt to death, just talking about that story where a 1-year-old was tortured, you could come up with the most depraved crimes in your head, and you still probably couldn't imagine it being as bad as what the IDF has done.
The most moral army in the world.
The most
please.
moral army in the world. Last week we talked about, as you pointed out, someone was raped with a knife. They had anal fissures and tears, broken ribs, you name it. And not only were they let off, there was a right to rape protest where many Israelis, I think settlers, were demanding these people be released. One of the people involved in the sexual assault went on Israeli media, had their face covered, but went on Israeli media, defended their actions, and people in the audience clapped that person. This is not just an issue with the government. You look at polling and you look at interviews such as Abby Martin, who went to Israel years ago, and recent ones. This is an epidemic of sickness within Israeli society. The data backs that up. The idea that you or anyone is going to debate whether this is a genocide in 2026 is absolutely, for the birds, deplorable. And if you are someone who still thinks this isn't a genocide or who's defending Israel, you are irreformable. You are someone I do not want to know. And I have no sympathy if you are shamed for the rest of your life. Even in 20, 30 years' time, you suddenly come to the revelation, because there's going to be a great awakening where I was always against this, and you start to feel guilty. I hope that guilt eats you away, because the crimes of Israel is something that I don't think I could have imagined people doing when I was 20 years old. And day after day, we're seeing horrific stories like that. Poor 1-year-old Karim being tortured.
Yeah, the Israeli government are such human rights abusers that they'll probably be given the FIFA Peace Prize next year.
Right, exactly. Which is the irony is the international community have done really nothing about it. Yes, we've had certain resolutions. Yes, we've had people condemn it, but really the institutions have been there. Okay, let's talk about the second part of the story. What do you make of the interaction between Robinson and Polanski in that clip, and Robinson's subsequent defense?
Honestly, I don't know who I have more contempt for, the people doing the genocide or the people supporting the genocide. They're both disgusting, reprehensible vermin. Yeah, Nick Robinson is not a journalist in any real sense at all. Neither are any number of the other people who are running cover for the Israeli government. Again, as was pointed out by one of the tweets you showed, they don't interview people who say it's genocide because, of course, they're running dogs for the Israeli government and nothing more. Again, as with the Christian right, I suppose in this case Zionist right, whatever, have done institutional capture on the BBC, on our political system, on our police forces, any number of different organisations which are there to, in theory, protect and serve the British people, but do no such thing because Israel basically is beyond reproach, according to the British establishment, which goes to show you that the British establishment do not care about the opinions of the British people, which are overwhelmingly against the actions of the Israeli government, both over the last 3 years and over the last 80 years. Nick Robinson is a joke and a clown. Zach Polanski did the right thing in calling this a genocide, as indeed he did the right thing of telling that other guy to piss off. Maybe in future it would be better if you could told Nick Robinson to piss off, because he is just as contemptible in my eyes as any other far-right piece of shit.
Now, of course, Turn Left is biased. We admit that. It's literally called Turn Left, and we are quite literally offering politics from a left-wing socialist perspective. That's fine. I don't care if people call us biased because we are. I also understand that the BBC wants to be impartial. The thing is, though, and part of the reason why I started Turn Left is I'm sick and tired of mainstream media outlets not being objective. They always appeal to subjectivity. They always appeal to, not being biased. But in this instance, just a little bit of objective reporting would say, okay, the UN, the ICJ, the ICC, human rights organizations, genocide scholars, right, have all said this one thing. It wouldn't be biased for Nick Robinson to say, okay, Zach Polanski, you're saying this is a genocide, and to be fair, you are referring to all these organizations that says so. In fact, BBC journalists should be more often going to Israel defenders or Israeli ambassadors saying, all these organizations are calling this a genocide. That would not be biased because you are appealing to an authoritative institution, yet they refuse to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, the point about the BBC, or indeed journalists in general, is that they will always jump to the defense of Israel by saying, well, Israel denies that. They don't do that for anything else.
Nope.
No, they're absolutely fine with that. And as to the comparison between your fine organisation and the BBC, there is a significant difference because, A, like you say, it's in the name. You're called Turn Left. You're not hiding anything. You're not pretending to be completely impartial on all of this. And secondly, you're not receiving public money. No one is being arrested or fined for not paying for Turn Left. The British government or the British state is not represented by Turn Left in the way that the British Broadcasting Corporation very much is. So it is incumbent upon them as a public service organisation with the word British in it, therefore representing in theory the people of Britain, to actually be impartial. And they are not. They are very, very partial towards the Israeli government.
Absolutely. I think we'll wrap that up there. We're going to bring in Ben, who is actually very poorly, but he's our producer tonight. Ben, how are you holding up?
I'm sick.
How are you holding up?
Yeah, Kevin is going to have a lot of sympathy with me, especially because I can mute him without him being able to do anything about it. So he's going to be very sympathetic and nice to me now. Of course. Anyway, so let's do donos first. Let's get the donos out of the way first of all. I say out of the way. We are very grateful for your donations.
Yeah, that was very disparaging.
I don't know why I said it like that.
Oh,
yeah, a little bit disparaging. Sorry.
Yeah, let's get through these pleb comments, shall we? Come on.
Yes. The people who keep the lights on. Okay, Michael, thank you very much for getting gifting a membership. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. And James Holmes donated £2 and said, "Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's Jeremy Beadle."
Absolute cunt.
Roasted. the World End 66 donated $4.99 and said, "With thanks for another great show." That's lovely. Thank you, the World End. Like that profile picture as well. Okay, let's get to some of the comments. So going back to the first story about Morgan McSweeney's phone, Jim Speak, I think, rightly pointed out that if... that didn't come across. There we go. If your phone was full of compromat, would you be that chill about it disappearing? Really? Full of state secrets? And he's just like, oh yeah, well, I reported this a while back. That's fine. I think that makes a fairly good point. Like, why are they so chill about? Or maybe they're not chill behind the scenes. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Oh, I reckon behind the scenes they're shitting themselves. Yeah. But...
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. But also they didn't lose this was nonsense.
Yeah,
Look, I don't buy it for a second. No.
Yeah. And neither does Becca, who said so he knew there was dodgy messages on his phone that far in advance, right? If you knew you'd have been having messages with Peter Mandelson, because I mean, I remember both of you like months and months before all of the like nasty sort of or all of the proper holding Peter Mandelson to account came about. Like both of you guys have been calling Peter Mandelson out. Like Helena's been doing it for years. You guys have been doing it for years. Navarro have been doing it for years. Like it's not like it's new information. So Morgan McSweeney would be aware and would be able to lose it in advance. Like that's not too much of a jump, to be honest.
What's not being mentioned, of course, is this is all Labour together scummery. Literally, the entire reason he was appointed was because he was Labour together, and Morgan McSweeney was his protege in compromat. Literally, he was the head of Peter Mandelson's compromat against the left division. So the idea that he's not aware of any of these dark tricks when he was literally raised politically by the Dark Lord himself. No, this is nonsense. This is absolute nonsense. I don't believe it for a second.
Even we now know Keir Starmer knew so much about Peter Mandelson, right? But let's say he didn't know. As I said earlier, there were so many like publicly known links to Mandelson and Epstein. Again, that picture that that famous picture of them two. There's multiple pictures of them two, right? But why would you then be like, oh, everyone knows about this picture between Epstein and Mandelson, I'm still going to hire him? Like, that's fucking crazy to me.
Yeah.
It's absolutely insane.
Well, because this was hubris. This was a job for the boys. That's it.
Yeah.
This wasn't a rational decision, because there's no way you would ever put him into that position if it was rational.
And
this
also
was political factionalism, which is the entire Keir Starmer project.
I think as well, the hubris side is that Keir Starmer believed, well, because I'm part of the establishment and Mandelson is part of the establishment and Morgan McSweeney is, we'll be protected. They won't throw us under the bus. And this is the thing, the establishment is like a self-eating cancer that will throw people under the bus for their greater good. And Mandelson, I think, was one of those people who was like, he doesn't actually have as much prominence as some other people. We can throw him under the bus. But I feel like they were like, do you know what? We are part of the establishment. We're in the club. We'll be fine. Oh, you're fucking not, because they will throw you under the bus to protect themselves.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, we got a couple of donations come through. So Rachel said, get Cog a hot toddy or 3, say no to producer abuse. Yes, I already did. I already turned Kevin's microphone off. He can't actually talk to us right now. See? Let's turn it back on.
Being against producer abuse is revisionist deviationism. Okay, producers need to be abused to keep them in their proper order.
Okay.
We treat our producers too nicely, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Goat Boy 2042 donated £5 and said, got to meet Zach Polanski when he came to Peterborough the other day. I agree with Kev. The man's an absolute Chad. Amazing. What a beautiful description.
True, but my condolences on you being from Peterborough.
Yeah,
I've never been, so I can't possibly.
It is a, let's say, an acquired taste.
And there was a lot of love for Kev in the chat today. Indeed, Jim Speaks said Kev's such a fucking great contributor. Zero bullshit and harsh truths. And that was, I think, just after you said it was just after you replied about the Morgan McSweeney phone stuff, and your comment was just straight up like, nope, I don't believe a word of it. And that is what people love to see. And Rachel similarly said, all hail the Kevolution. We love that, Kevolution. And then when Curtis came back on after the video of Zach being harassed, and he was on mute, somebody put in the chat, somebody called Nathalism put in the chat, mime Curtis. It's silent movie Curtis.
Yeah, you could have just guessed what I said.
Yes. And Edward Sexby said, Zach was in Norwich last Saturday. I swear my moobs got bigger, which was a brilliant comment. I love that.
True.
Are you gonna comment on Norwich being a shithole as well, Kev?
I've been to Norwich. It's all right. It's fine. Right. It's acceptable.
Which is the best city in England?
The best city I've ever been to. I mean, unfortunately, I hate the place, but London.
I suppose
it is.
You woke liberal lefty.
I know, right?
It's the only city in the country that's genuinely one of the world's, big cities. Yeah, okay, fine.
Can anyone explain to me why I hear Curtis in an Catherine Tate Irish accent? What? That is such a random thing to say. I don't know what that means.
So on the abortion question, Specs says right-wingers want women to be pregnant but don't care about kids when they are born. Yep, 100%. I think we all agree with that. And Becca said...
exactly, they're not pro-life, they're pro-forced birth.
Yeah,
100%.
All the welfare programs that help children, suddenly Conservatives absolutely
exactly. The Conservatives look. The idea that conservatism is pro-life when they've been going, oh, we should only feed the first 2 of their children.
Right, exactly.
Literally, yeah. And I think it's worth pointing out, as Becca said, 93% of abortions are less than 12 weeks, then less than 1% after 24 weeks. And it's worth saying that this still leaves the protections of the 1967 Abortion Act in place. So after 24 weeks, typically the protections that are given are the conditions under which you can have an abortion are that a fetus is passed away. So if it's going to be born stillborn, or the fetus will pass away within the first month of leaving the mother's womb. Or that it's a threat to the mother's life or well-being, I think, actually, because, like, for example, if you were going through a pregnancy that would leave you, like, unable to walk after the pregnancy for whatever reason, you wouldn't be expected to go through with that pregnancy. There are conditions for that.
We have a very fine example of where this kind of right-wing, religiously inspired shittery gets us just across the water in the Republic of Ireland, which thankfully has now, or is in the process of passing a constitutional amendment on this, because we've had several examples, one very notable one of a woman who had what was called an ectopic pregnancy, which basically meant the child would die, but unless they essentially did the abortion, the mother would also die. And because of the law, which outlawed abortion in any way whatsoever, the doctors legally just had to watch as she bled out on a table. And she passed away.
How's that for your compassion?
Yeah, so particularly horrific cases happened in Ireland. There was also...
Sorry, go on, Ben.
Sorry, there was also the case of, because it's relevant to Ireland, just before the 19th Amendment was passed, there was the death of Savita Halappanavar, who died of a very similar thing, but it was sepsis poisoning or sepsis that took Savita's life after she'd requested an abortion from a doctor because of the severe pains in her back and her stomach, and she knew that something was wrong, but because, as Kev said, there was a heartbeat law at the time. Savita Halappanavar is a name that is really worth remembering, because just before the 19th Amendment was repealed, it was Savita whose life was lost. Yeah, and I don't think it's insignificant the fact that this was like an Indian Irish woman. It was somebody from an ethnic background who are disproportionately likely to unalive and suffer due to these kinds of laws. Sorry, Curtis, go on.
Well, I just wanted to comment on the statistics Becca's put there, and I don't think it's exclusively from the right wing, but it seems to come from them a lot, which is this idea that it seems they believe that laws are in place, and if these certain laws aren't in place, it's holding people back to do some really disgusting things. So what I mean by that is, let's talk about drugs, for example, the legalization of drugs or the decriminalization of drugs. Of course, it's based on a health issue because the war on drugs doesn't work. And you often hear, well, you legalize drugs, everyone's going to get high. In the same respect that, people might say, well, you make more liberal abortion laws, people are just going to get an abortion left, right, and center. And the thing is, though, people don't do that because it's very traumatic to go through. I mean, as Becca shows here, 93% of abortions are less than 12 weeks. Not 24 weeks, by the way, 12 weeks. It's legal to have an abortion between 12 weeks and 24 weeks. But it's actually, most of them are before 12 weeks. Because most people don't want to have an abortion. And those that have an abortion, it's very tough. It's very difficult. It's a hard decision. But I feel like conservatives are like, well, if we make more relaxed abortion laws, you're just going to get abortions willy-nilly. And it's like, is that how you feel about women? Do you feel like women just do it for fun? Because the behavior of people will not change. This legislation which is now passed, which basically takes away any form of criminality towards women, doesn't incentivize abortion because you've got to be incentivized to do it. Who's incentivized to have an abortion? No one's incentivized to do it. It's not a nice thing. But I do think that women should be fucking prosecuted for caring about their bodies, for having the right to choose. And yes, after 24 weeks, when it comes to literal health risks in which the mother may die, I think that's good to not prosecute these people. But it seems like people on the Christian fundamentalist right, or not even fundamentalists, just right wings are like, oh no, these people will be having abortions for every incentive we allowed it to happen. You're fucking insane if you think that.
They are insane, and essentially you've elucidated the general opinion of the British people. Most of them aren't necessarily pro-abortion or whatever.
No,
some of them are very squeamish about it and may even personally be offended by it. But they understand that it's not the place of the state or indeed of private individuals to impose their religious beliefs on the medical decisions of individual people and their doctors.
Yeah,
simple as that.
That's very well put. No one is expecting people should be pro-abortion or relaxed about it. We are simply saying maybe your view should not be imposed on other people, and neither should the state. The way you feel about abortion is absolutely fine. I don't feel good about abortion. I do feel like I feel like what's important is women's rights and their right to choose. But I'm not like, oh yeah, abortion's no big issue.
I don't. I'll be honest with you. I'm a bit more based and awesome than you, so I don't really care about it at all. But generally speaking, that is that yeetus the fetus. No, I'm only joking. No, but generally speaking, like the average person sort of either doesn't care about it or is a bit kind of. Like it's not something they would personally necessarily do, but it should be up to the individual in consultation with their doctor to decide on their own medical needs. It's nothing to do with like the state stepping in and forcing religious observance on people. Fuck that noise. How dare you authoritarian pricks.
It's worth underlining as well that the pro-choice position is not just pro-choice when you make the choice to make an abortion. It's also the choice not to have an abortion. It's also, for example, like a woman in an abusive relationship, if she does not want to give up the child, it's being pro-choice also means giving her the choice to be able to keep that child when she wants to as well. It's the choice in pro-choice. It really is very important. And Rachel Atwood, I brought up because it was kind of relevant to what you guys were saying about them wanting to push their Christian beliefs on people. Rachel Atwood entirely correctly said Christian fanatics want to punish women for the original sins of Eve, literally, and that is 100% correct. It's not a correct thing to do. Rachel is correct in her analysis of it. It is about punishing women. It is about making women, pushing women back into the household. That is the idea behind it, is to push women and restrict their social mobility, basically. But it's also bearing in mind. Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry. No, you were going to make a serious point. I was just going to do a joke. No, go.
I knew you were going to do. I know.
You were about to say, "Oh, okay, I might support it in that case," weren't you?
No. I was just going to say. I was just going to do some biblical stuff there and just say, like, I don't think all women should be punished for it, but I think Eve should be viewed much more negatively because she was convinced by a fucking snake. Like, it's literally a snake.
Voter.
I think,
Yeah,
I mean, I think, you know that thing about like male authors on TikTok when it's like the how men write women. I feel like that's that sort of situation.
That'll be such a good thing. That's such a good question for my partner because she reads so much, and she said something about like male authors. Like she
how men write women.
Well, she says I don't actually read a lot of male authors, and I don't think she even really does it like on purpose. It's because there is a lot more authors from women, but also I think like there's this. You read the book and if it's talking about women, like, oh, why does that sound so weird? And they're like, oh, it's written by a man.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Can I just say to Libology in the chat, they say Eve wasn't real. Okay, well, how come humans are here then?
Checkmate, atheists.
Checkmate, atheists. Fucking hell. Okay, so what I was going to say actually was about a book, because there is a very interesting book called The Making of the Unborn Patient. It's by an author called Dr. Monica Casper, who at the time was it probably still is, the world's leading authority on fetal surgery. So surgery that's done on fetuses prior to their birth, and this book is actually about the history of fetal surgery. And the reason that I bring that up is one of the conclusions that Dr. Casper comes to is that if you prioritize the well-being of the fetus without prioritizing the well-being of the mother, the history of fetal surgery shows that you end up killing both the mother and the fetus. It's not a pro-life position. It's not a genuinely pro-care position unless you prioritize the needs of the mother and make sure that the mother's well-being is cared for, and that includes her consent. And nobody has the right to commit a continuous invasive medical violation of your bodily autonomy against your will. Nobody has that right. There is no situation you can name to me where somebody can commit a medical violation of your bodily autonomy against your will, and you have no say in that situation.
Well,
particularly one that's continuous.
Well, isn't there certain circumstances where that can happen, though?
Well, I would say this, right? I think that one violation of that rule, that precept, is for Americans who make tea in the microwave, they should just be killed. That's a joke. I'm joking. Shut up.
Oh, but it's so illegal. You can't even leave it there. You have to say it's a joke. I was actually going to make a serious point, and then Kevin came in with a banger. What does it mean in relation to your parents are like Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're like, we don't believe in certain medical practices, and the child who was under 18 or maybe like 10 years old, and like in that situation where a life-saving surgery could happen, but the parents are like, this is against our religious beliefs. I know it doesn't really happen in the UK, probably more America. In that sense, what does that look like? Or even actually, an adult is recommended some particular surgery, and the doctor's saying, you will die if you don't have it. And they're saying, well, it's my belief, I don't want it to happen. What happens there? Do you let these people die? Because doctors and nurses have an obligation to save people's lives, don't they? Then they take a
they do.
They do. But I'm not sure that overrides the individual person's conscience and self-ownership, right? Like doctors, the Hippocratic Oath obviously is a very important thing, but I don't think it should override just because someone else independently decides to take an oath means that your bodily autonomy is allowed to be destroyed. Now, I think it's silly if someone denies that kind of treatment, but ultimately that is their decision. Like, if you don't own yourself, you don't own anything, you know? So the fact that a doctor wants to reduce the amount of harm and doesn't want to do any ill to people is irrelevant to the fact that an individual controls themselves and their own decisions.
Yeah, that includes their bodily autonomy, and bodily autonomy is something more than a property right, right? Your bodily autonomy is something that is something that cannot be removed or taken away from you. You can't sell your bodily autonomy to another person, and therefore it doesn't function like a piece of property.
Laughs at indentured servitude.
Well, exactly. Unless you're going to argue for slavery and indentured servitude, but it's also.
I mean, the reason why I brought up that
a great British tradition. We used to be a real country.
It's also. It's also the reason the body is so important is because, like, in a moral sort of sense, to sort of paraphrase Immanuel Kant, it's the point where subjectivity and objectivity meet, and at that point, that is something that is completely unique in like moral philosophy, and it's something that we understand to be completely unique. And if we mean to treat people as ends in themselves and never as means to an end, their bodily autonomy always has to be respected. Curtis, did you want to?
Well, I was going to say the reason why I brought up that question is because I was watching TikTok, and when this shitty daytime TV show Slot was on, and it was like it was like an NCIS, but like for medical drama, and like one of these things happened in it. I was like, fucking hate this shit, and now it's stuck in my brain. I was like, oh, we might as well bring it up now. So yeah, that's TikTok Slot making it into the Turn Left Airways. Apologies.
Yes. By the way, when it comes to the child, I think it's a bit different when it comes to the adult choosing to not get a surgery to end up, because that's an adult making that decision. When it comes to a child, like somebody under the age of 10, I do think there should be 50% responsibility goes to their legal guardian, their parent, and 50% of that responsibility goes to their doctor, so that the doctor has some say in the ability to be able to go, well, no, this is something, your parents are anti-vaccine. At this point, your decision comes into play, and particularly from the age of sort of 11 upwards, I would say that medical autonomy is something that should be primarily handled by the person themselves. Your right to bodily autonomy doesn't change, and your right to define your bodily autonomy doesn't change just because you're a child. Most countries recognise from quite a young age that people have bodily autonomy, and the respect for bodily autonomy is like a fundamental right that overrides another person's right to life, including in, if you guys have seen the film My Sister's Keeper. Have you seen My Sister's Keeper? Okay, watch the film My Sister's Keeper. It's basically it's a film about two young girls. One of them is dying of cancer, and the other one the other one could donate a kidney, and she's refusing to. And the parents are like, "What? Why would you do this? Your sister's going to pass away unless you donate this." And then it's sort of revealed at the end of the film. I'm tearing up just think about it. It's sort of revealed at the end of the film. Sorry, spoilers, guys. But it's revealed at the end of the film that the sister with cancer had actually asked her sister to withhold it because she knew it was within her rights. And she basically wanted the cancer to kill her because it was making her suffer so much, So I really shouldn't be talking about this. This is really, really dark, but it underlines the importance of bodily autonomy within medical communities and like why we put so much emphasis on bodily autonomy. I could talk about this for ages.
You got too serious. I was going to do a joke about goalkeepers, but you.
No, I was like, he's going to do a fucking joke. I was like, I dare you to do a joke. I dare you.
I might have spoiled the mood there for Kev's
not
joke.
Not touching that one with a fucking barge pole.
Specs said, I do need a new sticker for the back of my phone. At Turn Left, got on that merch game. And there were a couple of comments about that.
Personal merch at the moment, but
oh, that's dope. Send me that immediately.
Yeah, it's like a retro version of the logo.
Yeah, that's
literally
cool.
like we had quite a few people talking about the merch and stuff.
That's something we really, really want to do, but we're trying to find the companies that exploit people the most.
Yeah, exactly. If we got any Bangladeshi sweatshops that want to get involved, come on.
Especially with like help me in the label. Now we've
ideally, what you want is a factory with suicide nets. Right? That's what that's the real stuff.
The difficulty is obviously trying to do it with ethical businesses and stuff like that. But that is definitely on the horizon, though. I want to see people out in the streets wearing turn left merch. And they're like, oh, what's that on your chest? I'm like, turn left.
Very nice, very nice. It's also on the road. That's how well known we are. It's also written on a lot of British roads.
It is. Do you ever do that thing? Or is it just me when you see a sign that says turn left? You go, no, turn left. Is that just me?
Look, we're famous.
I do it. My girlfriend was like, oh, see that? Turn left, and she was like, shut the fuck up, Curtis.
I thought it was turning point left. No.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. Is it?
Turning point UK left.
Yeah, turn left. Yeah, turning point UK. Yeah, well, they're not written on roads, so it doesn't count.
Exactly, that's bullshit. They fucked up that name.
Oliver Carpenter said if international lawmakers have any guts, they would uphold the Israeli complaints, but caveat that punishment would only occur if they answer for their own crimes. After all, the law should apply to all. Now, I don't think, obviously, the Israelis would probably go, nah, fuck that. We want to kill Palestinians more than we want international law upheld. But I do think this would actually be a fairly good way of calling them out because it immediately shows their hypocrisy. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, look, I think law should be universal. Yeah, so yeah, international law should apply to everyone. As I pointed out, the bombings in Israel probably do amount to a war crime by Iran. That's true, and for which the Iranian government should face repercussions. But again, as the questioner pointed out, if we imagine that Iran has incurred a legal debt by doing this, then Israel's legal debt is the size of America's actual debt in terms of its many and varied war crimes over, well, let's just say the last 3 years, let alone the decades that preceded them.
Yeah, like 90% of those who say they stand up for international law don't, because you're right, they will call out nations that break international, whether it be Iran or others, but won't say the same with their friends. You hear that with so many journalists. I mean, Mehdi Hassan absolutely blasted Piers Morgan one time when Piers Morgan was talking about Russia and Ukraine. And Mehdi was like, yeah, fine, we can absolutely, go after Russia, but why is it that we can't do the same with Israel? And literally, Piers Morgan said the quiet part out loud. He was like, yeah, but they're our allies. I was like, yeah, so fucking what? It doesn't matter if you're allies or not. If you're committing crimes, you're committing crimes. So
exactly.
Like say, we love international law, like Keir Starmer. They don't fucking mean it when your friends can do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if law doesn't apply to everybody, then it's not a law. What it is a weapon to be used against geostrategic enemies. And in which case, I don't think anyone should respect it then, because it doesn't mean anything.
And obviously, Israel are technically friends of the UK, but they're no fucking friend of mine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like they keep being called our allies. I'm sorry.
Ally.
Like, I'm sorry. Do allies often target British journalists with bombs? Sorry. Like at that point, I don't know that you're a very like. If your friends were firing missiles at you, I think you might stop being friends with them.
Yeah, with friends like these.
That sounds a bit anti-Semitic, Kevin. To be fair.
No, to be fair, I didn't condemn Hamas. So
you didn't condemn Hamas.
Oh, I had a really weird exchange where I was like talking about this with somebody on Twitter today who's like a lecturer at a university, and
lecture friend. Oh.
Well, lecture enemy in this case, because he was like, "Oh, I've never seen you." I was no, it wasn't actually, but he was like, "Oh, I was at a march against anti-Semitism the other day. What have you done against anti-Semitism?" And I was like, "Hey, you know, I stand up, against anti-Semitism. Showed him a video of what I'd been doing, like a video I'd made about like a synagogue attack about a month ago. But like fairly consistently, I've always been of the belief that like anti-Semitism is bad, but also so is Israel. These are not two contradictory positions.
Go on.
Oh, he said, and he said, well, I searched basically he showed screenshots of where he'd like searched my Twitter account, and he was like looking for the word anti-Semitism or references to the Bondi Beach attack, or he just searched them in, and then he put loads of screenshots, and he was like curious. It's like, motherfucker, my Twitter account is 2 months old. Like, that's why it's not. There's no references to the Bondi Beach stuff on there, because that was before the Twitter account was created.
To be fair, you might be the only person in the world that started a Twitter account 2 months ago.
Yeah, that's
like
yeah.
most people leave it, and you're like, "Hi, I'm new here. What's this place like?" Just a bit Nazi. Yeah. That's about it, really.
Literally.
And by the way,
Oh, sorry. I was just going to make a point, an actual serious point for once. My answer to that person would be: I stand in solidarity and defence of Jewish people, both against actual anti-Semitism and against the anti-Semitism put forward by the Israeli government in trying to link all Jewish people to their fucking war crimes.
Yep.
That was I was basically saying, I was like, it would have been good to say, yeah, I stand up to anti-Semitism because I stand up to Israel.
Yeah.
And then he probably would have said you're anti-Semitic after that.
Yeah, true. Don't make don't make Jewish people the face of American proxy war crimes. I think is the main point there. And on the question of impartiality, I do sort of want to get more of your guys' take on that. But Becca said it's only fair, as in quote, it's only fair was what Nick Robinson said. And Becca said in response, no, it's not fair. Fair is not a word that applies here.
If there's any time you could deploy that word in a really, really irresponsible way and inappropriate way, it's that time.
Well, look, it goes beyond the usual bullshit that you get from the BBC, where they're like, "Oh, we have to be fair and balanced, so we've brought on an astrologist and a person who believes the world is flat, 50-50."
Exactly.
Like it's worse than that, because they're literally doing like active defence. Like it's not even as if they've just got a person on from the Israeli government to defend themselves. They are doing the defence themselves.
I mean, what if?
And we're having to pay for it. It's disgusting.
And the thing is, it honestly, it's like, you're talking about the Nazi regime, and so they genocided all these people and did this and that, and then Nick Robinson goes, yeah, but Hitler would say that he didn't do anything wrong though. Just to be fair, I have to add that in. You would fucking do that, would you?
Sorry, astronomist. Apologies, I did the woo-woo one, and that was not meant to be.
The woo-woo one?
Astronomer and astrologist are like two similar words. Can you?
I know, but the woo-woo one is so.
The woo-woo one.
I wonder what you meant by that. Okay,
the flamboyant one. The woo-woo one.
The woo-woo one. The woo-woo one is cracking me up. I did want to say. It gave me an excuse to like pull up a clip of when Sangeeta Maiska asked me weirdly when I was interviewing her.
Oh, Sangeeta friend!
I knew that was coming. I still haven't forgotten the time you called me a briefcase wanker during that particular set. By the way, Kev. That was actually a hilarious watch through.
Have you considered not being a briefcase wanker?
No, I haven't. Not a possibility. I'll have you know that I that's in my DNA. So the completely forgotten what freaking point I was going to make there.
No, people say they're born this way, but no, briefcase is a lifestyle choice, and it's disgusting.
Briefcase is a lifestyle choice. So. Basically, the point I made when Sangeeta asked me about this very question is that there's like no such thing, I don't think, as like objective perspectives, particularly in journalism. Like you're always picking a side. You are always choosing a side, and I think that basically you have
something more. That's my objective right.
See, I think that people are confused about the terms objectivity and subjectivity. Like subjectivity means mind dependent, objectivity means mind independent. So, for example, there's also
all right,
that's such a briefcase fucking thing to say.
I know it is, but bear with me. So, like, something can be subjectively true or untrue, and more subjectively true or more subjectively untrue. So, for example, like we're debating the causes of the Second World War, and you might say like, I don't know, maybe I think I think it was the financial crash that caused World War II. And Curtis comes in and he's like, well, no, I think it was like America's withdrawal from Europe and the Versailles Treaty that caused World War II. Like, and those are both valid political arguments, right? There's subjective, different perspectives on the history. And then Kevin comes in and Kevin's like, well, actually, I think that the Martians, I think it was them who instituted World War II. Now that is that's a perspective.
It was it was the Martial Bolshevik conspiracy. Yeah,
Martial Bolshevik conspiracy. Exactly. And Kevin comes in with that perspective, right? That's still a subjective perspective. All three of those are subjective perspectives. It's just that two of them are well evidenced. They're still subjective. They're not mind independent. They still require minds to like think about them. They're not like a universal truth that exists mind independently. They're still perspectives.
Well,
do you see what I mean?
The actual reason, of course, the reason for the war is because Jeremy Corbyn ordered the invasion of Poland.
Yeah, I recall that.
I remember that too.
Yeah.
But then objective reporting, though, is something that is just something you can't disagree with, though. Like I said, the sky is blue. There's no subjective truth. Like, oh, you have a subjective truth, I have a subjective truth. So if the BBC wants to say, well, I can't pick a side in calling something a genocide, I mean, I agree. There could be subjectivity into it because it's the opinion of a court to say that. But I do think objective reporting would be saying something is genocide isn't just an opinion of some random person. There is an authority institution or multiple authoritative institutions that say this is a genocide, which allows me as a non-biased reporter, not taking sides, to say it's noteworthy that all these institutions have called this a genocide. Do you see what I mean?
I see what you mean, but I still think that's not objectivity. That is well evidenced subjectivity, and that's slightly different. But this is like a really philosophical point, and we're just about to hit 1 hour 30 minutes of the show. So I want to hand back to you. And,
all right, Daycar, fuck's sake.
Exactly. Yeah, because I'm just dragging you into my bullshit.
Academic.
I know, right?
You don't know. You can never guess how many times I've done the Homer nerd thing from my stream deck. Okay.
Incredible. I will hand back to you guys.
Thank you.
I'll let you finish off the show. Thank you very much, guys.
Very enjoyable comment section there, and fair play to Ben, who is feeling very sick and managed to do it. What a trooper. Of course, thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you to all the comments, and also thank you to all the donations. Thank you, Kevin, for once again being a fantastic guest.
Thank you for being a fantastic host, and for Ben being a fantastic producer.
Well, that was really nice.
I don't know why that sounded sarcastic. I didn't intend it to be.
To be fair, that fucking did, actually.
I didn't mean it to be.
And
I'm not. I don't think I'm capable. I don't think I'm capable of sincerity anymore.
If there's Jeremy Beadle comments in the comment section, you cannot hold me responsible for that. Yeah. That's our viewers. True. They are independently minded. They're subjectively calling you Jeremy Beadle, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, but you know what? It's been a fantastic show. Again, thank you to everyone who tuned in. Remember, you can support independent media by going to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is, of course, a link to our Patreon and a link to an individual, and again, they call it Ko-Fi Coffee. I never understand what the name of it is called, but you can give an individual one-time donation. Of course, you could become a YouTube member for 99p. Of course, Normal Island shows are on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 7:30 p.m. We'll be back on Wednesday at 7:30. I'm Curtis Daly. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.